You're listening to Inside Lebo, a podcast giving you an inside look at Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, produced by Mount Lebanon's Public Information Office.
Have you ever heard the title state representative, but you're not exactly sure what that role involves or how it affects your everyday life here in Mount Lebanon? Today's guest can help answer some of those questions. Welcome to Inside Lebo, the official podcast of the municipality of Mount Lebanon. I'm your host, Rachel Windsor, Mount Lebanon's Assistant Public Information Officer and the Senior Editor of Mount Lebanon Magazine.
And I'm Ian McMeans, Assistant Municipal Manager and Municipal Planner. Today we're very happy to be joined by Pennsylvania State Representative Jen Mazzocco. As our state representative for our community and some of our neighboring communities, she serves our residents in Harrisburg while also working closely with her constituents back here in the district. Beyond the title, she's also a neighbor, a community member, and someone with a unique path to public service. In today's episode, sponsored by Trouvers Jewelry, we'll get to know Representative Mazzocco, learn what a state representative does, and talk about how her office serves residents every day. Representative Mazzocco, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Great. So before we talk about government and your work specifically, I'd love for our listeners to get to know a little bit about the person behind the title. So could you please tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up? What was life like growing up? All of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I grew up in Westmoreland County, so in Jeannette, or kind of in between. So I went to Hempfield area school district. So we were in Hempfield Township, which was in between Jeannette and Penn and Adamsburg, kind of just right there. So I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me. It's more rural than here. We rode bikes a lot. We were out in the woods. I was telling somebody a story the other day about how we used to just be outside all day and getting into like lots of trouble probably, and like our parents were just like whatever, and then they'd yell over the deck to come back. So it was kind of like that kind of little bit more out in the wilderness sort of time. But I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and that's where I met my husband. He's from Altoona. So when we were looking to buy a house, our realtor was like, have you ever checked out Dormont? And we were like, no, we have not really. We're not South Hills people, the bridge, crossing bridges and going through tunnels thing. So we checked it out and we loved it down here, but it was definitely, a different kind of neighborhood than I had ever lived in, but, just loved being down here. And we've been here for 13 years, so it's been really nice.
Great.
So did you ever imagine that one day you'd be serving in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, or did public service kind of find you later on?
It found me later on. I did not imagine that I would be doing this job, really up until pretty recently, I guess. But I went to school to be a teacher. I thought I would be a teacher forever. About 10 years ago, I met Kate, my colleague on council in Dormont, and I was not yet involved in politics. I was a little bit involved with the work of my union, the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers, but I wasn't like a community activist. I'd never gone to a meeting. In fact, I remember someone tried to ask me to go to a council meeting about, I think there was a proposal for a storage unit to be built. You might remember this, Ian, like on Potomac, and it was a big hubbub. And somebody was like, you should go down and like speak at this meeting. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe. And then I didn't, because I was like afraid. I was like, why would I go in there? These people will think I'm ridiculous. And so now on the other end of it, I know that that's not true, but that was kind of my political life before that. And Kate sort of just said, hey, we need, some people to potentially run for council. And I gave it some thought, and she seemed nice, and it sounded like something I could do. And so I did it. And that's how I got involved in public service. And I think over the 2 terms that I was a council person, I realized I liked doing things that could help, make our communities better and help people. And so when Judge Miller decided that he was going to run, I think that was when I really knew that I would do it. But I think I had thought about it a little bit before that and considered the possibility. But, it certainly wasn't like a trajectory that I knew I was on forever. I think it was kind of the buildup of a variety of opportunities and experience that just kind of like got me to the point where I'm like, all right, I could do this, I think. So
awesome. And campaigning is also something that not a lot of people get to experience. So what was that process like for you, and were there any lessons that you learned that still stay with you today?
Yeah, this was an interesting campaign just because it was a special election. So it's a little different than it might have been if it were a regular term election. And so I did have to, the first step was, getting the support of the Democratic committees here. And that was very strange because it's 113 people and you just have to convince them that you're the best person. But it can really, there's a lot of things in the mix there, I suppose. And so, what I did for that was I just had a lot of coffee with folks. And I think luckily, over time, we've built, between Dormont and Mount Lebanon, we built a good relationship. So I did have a lot of connections and had kind of demonstrated, that I was involved in the community and people knew who I was a little bit. So that kind of made it a little easier. But, I had to talk with people that I hadn't really met before and try to tell them why I'd be good at this. But I actually think that goes into the second part, which is, lessons I learned. I think talking to people when you're trying to get elected and then when you're also elected is super important. So after I got the nomination, it was January, so cold. It snowed, if you recall. And so it was a tough time. There's reasons we don't have elections in the winter here in Pennsylvania, I think. And so it was a little tough, but I knocked 1,600 doors in the special, and we knocked as a group like 4,000. So we really tried to get out and talk to as many people as we could and just hear what was on their mind and make sure they knew who I was. I think that was the biggest thing was Dan had been around for so long, and he was very well known and obviously very well liked. I don't have to tell you guys that. But, for somebody new who was from a smaller community in the district to be able to be like, hey, here's who I am, so that you're not just showing up and voting for me because I'm in a certain party. You know who I am, you know what I've done. You've had a chance to ask me questions if you want. I thought that was really important. Like, I didn't want to take for granted that, this district votes a certain way, and so it would be easy. I wanted to make sure people had something to say, like, oh, okay, this girl seems like she'll be all right, so that was I think what I took away from both parts of it was really just like making sure to talk to people all the time. So
That's great. And so I think one thing people sometimes forget when they think about elected officials in general, at any level of government, is that, you're people and you have lives outside of government.
Yeah.
So when you're not working, what do you do with your spare time?
So at this point in my life, I do a lot of hanging out with my kids, as you may be able to relate. I have two girls, they're 7 and 5. And so I try to spend as much time with them in the evenings, or, if there's a event going on and I can take them with me, I do that. But Penny played softball. My older one played softball this spring, so we went to a lot of softball games. They love to ride bikes. The other day we went roller skating. So we're just doing a lot of stuff that is outdoors and kids stuff. I like to walk, so I try to walk places if I have to go somewhere. So like as much as possible, I try to walk around. And then I like to read. I like to ride my bike. This is also going to go into the hobbies question, which I feel like I'm like bad at hobbies. Like none of those things are really like true hobbies. I feel like my husband tried to buy me a sewing machine. I asked for it. Like I was like, I want to get into sewing. I want to like make clothes. I'm going to thrift things. I'm going to be like, and no, I'm not. Like I did not do that. It's still in the box. I got into needlepoint a little bit, but not really. I started one and I didn't finish it. So I have like a big problem with like, I'll kind of be like, all right, here comes my new like thing I'm going to get into, and then I don't. But
I relate to that.
Yeah.
I have an electric guitar sitting in the corner of my apartment that I've touched like 3 times.
Yeah, I tried that when I was younger. It might still be in the attic. I have a guitar, but never learned how to play it. So I don't know. I think I have filled my time over the years with lots of community stuff and union activities and teaching things, so that it's almost like those are the hobbies, which sounds really lame. I don't know if that's like a great answer to like what do you do with your free time.
No,
work.
Yeah, I think it just shows that you have varied interests, and I don't know, it's common for me at least, so I understand. What would you say might surprise people to learn about you?
I spent a few years teaching in Prague when I was younger, so I was right after college, and again, kind of like didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't have a clear path. So my friend was like, I'm going to go get a TEFL certification. So that's like teaching English as a foreign language. And I lived there for 2 years. I was planning to stay for a year at most, and then really just had a great time and made some good friends. And And that really was what I think convinced me to be a teacher for real. Like, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I did it there, and I was like, this is cool. I can do this. I like it. And so when I came back, I went for my master's in teaching. But yeah.
That's great. And you talked a little bit about, just how much you enjoy going to community events. And, we've obviously seen you at lots of things, from ribbon cuttings to school programs, nonprofit fundraisers, and all that. And you talked about the importance of getting out there and meeting people face to face, which is definitely, a big thing for people in any role in government, just to get out and talk to their constituents. So I think that's great. You pretty much talked about all that. So we will now go for a quick break with a word from our sponsor, Trouvers Jewelry. And when we return, we'll talk more with Representative Mazzocco about the role she plays as a state representative.
Looking for that perfect piece of jewelry? At Trouvers Jewelry, you're not just a customer, you're part of the family. Locally owned by Mount Lebanon residents Rob and Kay Trouver, Trouvers has specialized in exquisite craftsmanship and custom jewelry design for over 30 years. Rob is an expert goldsmith, ensuring your jewelry is created with the utmost skill and care. Whether you're looking for something timeless or one of a kind, Trouvers delivers it all. Visit us at the corner of West Liberty and Piermont Avenue, or check us out online at trouvers.com. At Trouvers, it's personal.
And welcome back. In the first half, we introduced Representative Mazzocco, and she shared a little bit about herself. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about what a state representative specifically does. Representative Mazzocco, let's talk a little bit more about your role. So if somebody met you at the Uptown Market or a neighborhood block party and asked, what exactly do you do? How would you explain it?
I think it's easiest to explain it as it's two different things, but they're related. So the Harrisburg part of it, we're voting on and working on legislation that changes the state law, and so that influences a lot of the things that then kind of trickle down to what the municipalities can do, but also just the way that the world works for you in Pennsylvania. But so there's that work that we do up there, and that work does bleed back into the local stuff, right? So I meet with constituents about their thoughts on different bills, or what they would like to see happen, what programs they want to see funded, things like that. And we also work on legislation here. So when I'm in Harrisburg, I'm kind of just there almost to hit the button, but all the work behind it happens all the time. And then the other half of it is really being the conduit to the state government for people here, and being in the local office, being available to people if they have questions. So our office really focuses on helping people with state services. So do you need help with something related to PennDOT, or are you doing a property tax rebate? We help you file that. Senior Connect cards, we do a lot of that. Or just really, do you have a problem, and do we have a connection that we can help you with? Someone had an issue the other day with an order they made with the Fine Wine and Good Spirits, which is the state-owned liquor store, and we were able to call the Liquor Control Board liaison and help them find a solution to that. So it's really knowing who to ask for a solution, I think. And our office, for a long time, and this will continue, really prioritizes being a problem-solving place. So even if it's not a state service, we'll be able to find someone that can help, hopefully. And so there's the Harrisburg, the legislative part. I think there's the constituent services, and then me being around, as we talked about before the break, being available to people, being at events, being kind of someone who is invested in what's going on day to day in the community. So that's, I think, kind of in between all of that. That was a bad explanation. I think if I was at the Uptown Market, someone would be like, that was a little too complicated, but it's a lot. It's it seems pretty simple, but I think people look to their leaders for a lot of things, and it's not always exactly your job description, but it's just being involved and being around. So
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. So in a typical week, how do you kind of divide your time between Harrisburg and then being back here in the district?
Yeah, so this is interesting. It's more kind of what weeks of the month or what parts of the year are we up there more. So in January through May, it's 1 or 2 weeks in the month. We go up from Monday to Wednesday typically. So then when I'm back, Thursday and Friday, I'll come into the local office. I really try to be in the office. I like going to work. I think that's, just being used to being a teacher and going to school every day. And it's that's where work is. So I try to be there. And if you ever need me, I'm usually there if I don't have a meeting. And then there's months where, June, when we're working on the budget, where we're up there most of the month, but it's still usually Monday to Wednesday until we're really in crunch time, and then it can kind of be whenever. So this year, we did get the budget done like somewhat. It was not on time, but it was close. And but we ended up going up on a weekend to vote on it, but that's not typical. Usually we are there during the week. And then, the summer months were off from Harrisburg, if you will, but we're still here in the community, obviously at the office or, at community events. And our office is doing we're trying really deliberately to be out as an office in the community. So we're doing some walk and talks where people can sign up to take a walk in the park with me, and we can talk about whatever they want to talk about. And I'd also like to do some bike and talks, but we haven't it seems like that might be more complicated, so we'll see. And we're doing a lot of pop-up offices, and including at some of the events in Mount Lebanon that are already happening, like the farmers market, the uptown market, the Final Fridays. So we'll be out and about for those, but we're also doing National Night Out in Baldwin. We're doing pop-up at the Dormont Library. So we're really trying to be around the district and just where people are already, so that if they would not think hey, I should go in the local office, they can find us there maybe by accident. And so just trying to be out and about while we're home, and then we'll go back in September. So it kind of just depends on the time of year, and it's really focused around the budget process, I think, overall. So
Cool. So, a lot of residents really regularly interact with Mount Lebanon's municipal government, but state government can sometimes feel a little bit more distant for people. So how would you explain the difference between what you do at the state level versus what our commissioners or our municipal staff do?
Mm-hmm. So it's funny. I think obviously the municipal level, it's a lot of the day-to-day stuff that grinds life, right? So the trash and how the streets are organized and if they're paved and is everything functioning right? Do you have police officers and firefighters? Are they so and long-term planning at the community level. And I think that the state level, it's obviously laws that are sometimes further reaching than that, but a lot of what we do does kind of dictate what municipalities are able to do. And so speaking of, we were talking earlier about e-bikes. We were talking about what the state law is and then what the municipalities are able to or wish to enforce about that law. And, we're in the middle right now of really debating what that law should look like, right? So even though the municipalities have to sort of deal with some of the things that are coming from the state level, we can also shape what they're able to do. And so I think they do interact a lot more than you might think. And, you don't see us at the commission meetings all the time. We're not the person you yell at right away when you're upset about something, but a lot of the decisions we make will then trickle down to what, your commissioners are able to decide on and how they do their jobs. So, and then funding really is another big thing, right? So the municipalities are often doing projects that are really outside the scope of the amount of money you have at a local level. And so, there's state grant programs that we try to support the big projects that are going on. And so that's another kind of key, not difference, but I think way that we work together in a way that you will see it come out in your day-to-day life, right? Does the playground get built? Is that garage project done, right? Those big things, but they may be operated at municipal level and supported by the state. So.
And we're definitely very thankful for all of your advocacy on our behalf to get some of the grants that we've gotten so far. And we've been very successful in the past, and we definitely would like to continue, being successful in those in the future. So thank you for, all your advocacy for Mount Lebanon and for the surrounding communities as well, because any money coming back to the area supports everyone.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that you talked about was that your office is geared towards helping people be a problem-solving entity, right? So what is the best way for someone to get in touch with your office if they have questions or have a issue they need assistance with?
Yeah, so I think calling is a good way to do it. But I personally, I don't know if this is a millennial thing, but I hate calling on the phone. I'm
Gen Z and I can't do it.
Okay, all right. So for those of us that just refuse, then I think you can also email. So my rep Mazzocco at pahouse.net is our office email essentially that everybody sees, and so you don't have to worry about whether I'm gonna see your email and remember to respond to it really. But Jimmy and Alicia and Louise that are in my office are constantly in that email. So if you have kind of if that's your comfortable way to reach out, that's a good way to do that. But they're also there to answer the phones. And then we love when people come in the office too. So if you're around Uptown and you want to pop in, or you can take, I'm really happy that this office is close to the T station and the bus lines, so you can get here from, maybe not perfectly, but from various points in the district. So, we just love when people visit us. And of course that's for, problem solving, but also just to like chat. And, if you have things on your mind, I'm always happy to hear it and engage in conversation on that. Cause I think, like I said, that's a big part of my job. So.
Great. And, you mentioned that you represent several communities, and that obviously includes Mount Lebanon. So what would you say stands out to you about our community?
I think Mount Lebanon is a really interesting suburb because it has sort of all these different places in it that, like, some of them are very urban, they're very city-like, and that gives it, I think, these wonderful, like, kind of walkable business districts, and you get that, like, kind of very, I think, tight-knit feel. And then you do have the places that are a little bit more spread out, but I think it ultimately, like, gives a good balance as a place. And just, I think, overall, like, I think the next, sorry, like, I know the question, so I'm, like, going ahead, but, like, that people are so engaged, like they're just really like, they want to participate in what's going on, and that's great. And I don't think that's maybe not like unique to Mount Lebanon, but I do think people are very, sure to make sure that like they have a voice in what's going on, and that they are, there's just so much going on here, so they're involved in the community, involved in like making sure this is a great place to be. So I think that stands out.
That's great. You're absolutely right. We do have a very engaged citizenry, which is very good from a government standpoint, that people will definitely let you know what their opinions are. So from what you've heard from talking to people so far, and without, you don't have to necessarily get into like specific legislation, but are there some common themes you've been hearing from residents recently?
Let's see. I have heard a lot about data centers, which like I think is, we're not going to have a data center in District 42 probably, but like obviously they have big impacts on our grid and pollution and all these things. And so I have gotten a lot of emails about like a variety of legislation that we have kind of floating around. And the House passed a bunch of things from, regulating for community benefits agreements and water supply and all kinds of stuff. But also we voted to repeal, there's like a sales tax exemption. We did all kinds of stuff. And so that none of that has happened in the Senate. So, like I think one frustrating thing sometimes for me is like, I'll get a lot of questions or like, advocacy about an issue. And I have to be like, we did this, but the other chamber did not, or something like that. So that's one thing. I think I got a lot of emails about the recent change to second-degree murder. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to that, but there was a Supreme Court decision. I'm going to mention this specifically because I did get emails, and I'm wondering if people are interested in it beyond. But so there was a PA Supreme Court decision in March related to the penalty for, or the sentence for second-degree murder, which was life without parole, like automatically. And they found that to be cruel and inhumane according to the PA Constitution. And so we were given 120 days to legislate a solution to that, to remedy that sentence. And so we actually just went up last week and voted on something that would work retroactively to make sure people were eligible for parole after a certain number of years, and that would look forward to create a sentence structure that would be, humane, I suppose you could put it. And still reflect the severity of the offense and take into account culpability. So I did get a ton of emails about that, and a few meetings and advocacy groups, but also just constituents that had, either just were interested in the issue or part of a group that maybe, I met with some people that visited people in jail and had exchanged letters with people to hear like their story and how they had rehabilitated. So I think like surprisingly, I think some of these really big issues that may not be directly connected to our district but are obviously impact us on a wider scale are honestly what I seem to hear more about than maybe some more specific things. Also, people love the Disability and Mental Health Summit that Dan started 13 years ago, and so we continued that, and we will continue to do that. I would say that was the number one issue that people have said, or have said like, we are glad that your office has done that and that you're continuing it, and so we will. So anyone who's listening who was worried about that, rest assured. So yeah.
Perfect. So what would you say are some of the most rewarding parts about representing your district?
I don't know. It's interesting. I just really like all the communities in our district, and I do think they are different in a lot of ways, but also not. Like, I live in Dormont. It's very, dense, and we like to think of ourselves as very like, we're all neighbors, and we, know each other well, and we walk around a lot and all that stuff. But that's not totally different from, like I said, parts of Mount Lebanon, and then Castle Shannon is really wonderful, and has also we have these similar layouts of like, a little downtown area that you can get to pretty easily. We have transit, we have, just, I don't know, like every place is so interesting. And I think that goes for Upper St. Clair, which has these wonderful parks, and just like it really, like in 42, I think you can get just a wide range of like what what a great like living experience is. And so I think that's really, it's rewarding in the sense of like really having like a little bit of everything, and not having to be like, well, you're the city representative, so you think this, or you're the rural person, so you think that. It's kind of like, I don't know, we have like little bits of all of it, so I feel like I can relate, and a lot of the things we talk about, kind of apply to us, in a way that some people might be surprised by, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you know from your previous role on Dormont Council and now your new role in the state legislature, the public service is not always easy. So what keeps you motivated?
Right now, it's easy because I am new at this, and I feel like every day is really exciting and fun and different. Like every day I get to do different things that I maybe never imagined. Like a couple weeks ago, I went on a tour of like the Hilltop Urban Farm, which is not in our district, but is relevant to like food insecurity, which impacts everywhere and is a big network of, interconnected things. So it was really cool to do that. And then, the next day meet with a constituent who's got a totally different topic they want to talk about. It's just really cool to be able to like spend my time kind of learning about all these different issues and learning the intricacies of them. And then being able to go and like talk about legislation, and also talk about it with people who have done this a while and from different parts of the state who have insight about like how to solve this problem. I just really enjoy learning from everybody. So I'd say, I guess that's, it's easy to be motivated right now because it just feels like I can't believe this is a job, like, which, that I get to do all this work, but it feels like it's not work because it's really fun and it's, connecting with people. But I do have learned that I used to think I had kind of like an endless social battery, that like I was always like, yes, I will go to this, I don't mind going to that. And I have found that like I do need to find time to like just be with my thoughts. So that helps me a little bit, kind of balancing, like taking some time to like just check out or maybe read a book or something like that, just be like separated from, so that I can have the energy to go back and do it the next day. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, when you look back years from now, what do you hope that people will remember about your time in office?
I hope that people will remember that I was here for them, that I was accessible, that I was somebody that they could talk to, that I wasn't, I'm the state rep and I'm too fancy and important to talk to you. And I think Representative Miller set a very good example in that. He was always around and he would talk to anyone about anything, whether he agreed or disagreed. And I think that I took that lesson well. I learned that from watching him do this for a long time, and I want to be that way too. I also want people to remember that I hope to do this, I've only been around for 4 months, but trying to fight for working people and fight for like the most vulnerable people in our communities, and to just make our communities better places to live. I think I tried to do that a little bit while I was on council in Dormont, working on like active transportation and thinking about how we plan, urban areas, how we make people use transit, how we make things walkable, how we like design things so that they are like pleasant places to be, and that we get people to be out and about and connect with each other. And so I hope to continue to do all that kind of work, and I hope that I can have a legacy in that. And so I guess that's it.
Great. Well, thank you, Representative Mazzocco, for joining us today and sharing a little bit about your work, your background, and also what it means to serve the people of our community.
Yes, and as the representative mentioned, if you would like to reach out by email, it's repmazzocco@pahouse.net, or you can call their office or stop in the office here in Mount Lebanon in our Uptown Business District. So you can always reach out to them if you have any questions or need assistance for things at the state level. So that's all for this edition of Inside Lebo, sponsored by Trouvers Jewelry, produced by Marsha Morgenstern, with music by Drew Monyo and graphics by Amy Robinson. Be sure to subscribe for future episodes, and we'll see you next time with more from Mount Lebanon.
Thanks for listening to Inside Lebo, produced by Mount Lebanon's Public Information Office. Learn more about all things Lebo at mountlebanon.org or by following our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages.